You're listening to an archived Cabral Concept podcast. After listening to this show, check out the most up-to-date podcasts available at stephencabral.com/podcasts or search directly on iTunes. And now, welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Thank you for coming back to this Wellness and Weight Loss Wednesday. I really like getting that wellness word in there, and it's really important to me because whenever we talk about weight loss, we can't not mention the word wellness. And here's why. I've said it before, but I'm going to continue to say it again. Too many people right now are trying to lose weight without getting healthy at the same time. I'm telling you, it's so much easier to just get your body healthy because there's a reason why you gain the weight. Your body's not healthy. Now, yes, it could be from eating too many calories, not moving your body enough, but that's not that many people that I see. It's honestly not. It's just truly not. People right now, they're toxic. They're literally loaded full of toxins. Their fat cells are not, they're just full of toxicity as well. PCBs, flame retardants, all of these things. But then also the cell receptors aren't working properly. They're not able to get the sugar into the cells. The sugar stays in the bloodstream. They're not able to burn body fat because of that. So really what we're talking about today, and every single Weight Loss Wednesday, is how to get the body totally healthy. How do we get it like literally wherever you are right now, 10 times that level of health? If you do that, you can't be overweight. You can't be sick, and you're going to live longer because a healthy body can't be any one of those things. It can't be anything but healthy. So if you're not healthy right now, we know that something is imbalanced in your body. That's just the bottom line. You could be doing everything right? You could say like, well, I'm juicing and I'm doing, multivitamin and I'm seeing this naturopath and, whoever it might be. Still, something is off. A healthy body does not have the symptoms of disease. It does not. And it also doesn't have the symptoms of being overweight. Being overweight is literally a symptom of something wrong inside the body. It's a metabolic process. It's a metabolic imbalance. Now, it can be from exotoxins from the environment. It can be from endotoxins from in your body. The body's not processing something correctly, but something is wrong. And that's the bottom line. Once you correct that something, everything gets better. The weight comes off naturally. I mean, that's literally what we do is we focus on health and the body gets healthy, the weight comes off naturally, and people don't regain it. The only time they regain it, if they would go back to poor habits, poor healthy habits. But again, we're realistic. We live in the real world. I live in the real world. And I would be upset if I never got to eat some of my favorite foods. And my favorite foods are not always health foods. So once a week, I still allow myself to have whatever it might be, like whatever my favorite food is or whatever I'm craving that week. I eat that at one meal. I enjoy it. I don't pretend that it's a health food. I don't try to manipulate it by saying oh, well, this is, high fat, so it's keto. No, I just say, hey, this is one of my favorite foods. And as part of my life, I decided that once a week, I'm going to eat some of my favorite foods, and that's it. And then I go back to living healthy. And that's kind of a nice balance. I found that to work for me. Some people do it a couple times a week, and maybe every once in a while I will do it 2 nights as well. But once you start to get past that, your body starts to create more inflammation. You start to get more fatigued. You start to get more bloating. You start to gain weight. You get puffier. You get cellulite, all of those things. So everyone finds their happy balance, their medium, whatever that is. But what I want to do is I want to talk about one thing that could greatly aid you in a lot of the issues that people are having, which is digestive based, which is feeling bloated, which is retaining water weight, which is kind of like your body might be totally toned, but your belly, it might still look a little, there's some subcutaneous body fat there. And what is that? Well, subcutaneous body fat is the fat where when you kind of bend forward, it starts to roll up a little bit. And that's that subcutaneous fat. Now, there's something called visceral fat. There's other types of fat as well, brown fat. We're not going to get into that today, but that's more around the organs. That's what looks like a pot belly. And sometimes you see more so guys than women, but they have that visceral fat, that pot belly based look. And what happens is a lot of times when our body just simply isn't processing food correctly, meaning it gets gummed up in the intestines, it creates inflammation. In Ayurvedic medicine, they said this is one of the sources of all disease was called ama. And most ama came from food and improper proper food combinations. So that's what I want to teach you today. And I've talked about this way back on the Cabral concept, but I want to look at it from a little different angle today. And how I teach when I'm doing a seminar, whether I'm speaking, whether I'm working directly with private wellness client, whoever it might be, is I always talk like this, that if you think about it now, thousands and thousands of years ago, like let's just say hunter-gatherer based society, we wouldn't necessarily gather 15 different types of food and eat them all at the same meal. We would most likely choose certain groups of food or even just eat monomeals, which is one food at a time. Now, I know that we're not going to go back to that, so I want to be realistic as well. But what I want to teach you today is that not all foods digest well together in the stomach. They actually start to literally ferment. So that means if you put in some foods, like let's say some foods like fruit, they digest in about 20 minutes. When you put those into your stomach, fine before a meal, but not so much afterwards. And I always like to give a little story when I talk about this food combine. It kind of makes it a little bit easier. And so what I like to say is this, and I'm actually going to give you all the technical breakdown in a moment, but not too long ago, but I guess longer than I care to admit, I used to go over my grandmother's every Sunday for dinner, and dinner for us was around 12:30, 1 o'clock. And so what we do is, all the kids, I was a kid at the time, we would all go over, the adults would be there, probably like 14 to 16 of us on any given Sunday, and people would pop by. It was a nice, Italian-based dinner that we would do, and many different nationalities, but my grandmother came from a nice Italian family, and she will look like literally your typical Italian grandmother, and I always remember for that, she had a little apron on. She'd be cooking the pasta. So what we did is we sat down first and we had a little fruit cup. So we had a little fruit to start the meal. And this is what she was taught back generation upon generation from when her entire family lived in Italy. So it started with the fruit. After that, about 20 minutes or so, we would have a pasta course. And the pasta, she made her own homemade red sauce. We would eat pasta, and then we would wait again about another 20 minutes or so, sometimes a half hour. So after that pasta dish, we would have a roast, and we would have vegetables with it. And it might be, let's say, asparagus, and it might be sliced cucumber, and it could be some broccoli, any different type of vegetable that she was making that weekend. And then after the roast, and the meat and the veggie portion, we would have salad. And the salad would end the meal. So very different from the US where you're doing typically salad before the meal. I'm going to explain why this matters in a moment. And then let's say about an hour to an hour and a half after the whole dinner was over, all the adults would sit down and they would have a cup of coffee. And that would say about 2:30 or so. So they'd have their coffee and they might have like a biscotti or some type of like dry cookie. So this is really interesting. And this is going to break down why even if you're not perfect with food combining, if you can layer it properly, it's going to make a huge difference. And that's what I found really works well for a lot of my clients, especially when they go to eat a lot. So what did my grandmother do there? Again, she knew nothing about this. What she did was this. Fruit first. Fruit gets digested in about 20 minutes. So it's already out of the stomach. So it can't ferment. It can't cause all of this bacteria. Like if you had fruit after the meal and put that on top of the meat, it would just stay there for hours and it would just literally cause gas and fermenting and all those things that obviously you don't want. So then after that, we had pasta. Well, pasta is going to get digested in just about maybe 60 minutes. That's it. It's going to get broken down by the stomach. It's just starch. Starch breaks down to sugar, and that's moved through the stomach as well. Now we get into the harder to digest foods, right? So they need to be kept by themselves. We have vegetables and we have meat. And those two things can be in the stomach for 2 to 3 hours, or even more if your digestive system is very weak, if you don't make a lot of hydrochloric acid. So why then the salad after the meal? Well, after the meal, all of that lettuce, all of that fiber, that also takes hours to digest. So in Italy, they use it as almost like a palate cleanser, salad at the end of the meal. In Ayurveda, it's called adding more air or vata to the stomach, which expands the stomach. It actually gives a little bit more space for digestion. I won't get into all of Ayurvedic digestion today, but it's a beautiful, beautiful topic that should be read up on, especially by any health practitioner out there. Very, very important. So after that, though, then what do? Well, they had coffee afterwards. Why coffee after the meal? And again, I'm not promoting that you drink a lot of coffee, but if you do, after a meal is the smartest time to have coffee because it's acidifying. So again, they might have wine as well. Those things are acid-based. Acid helps to break down all of the food in your stomach, especially the meat, especially those heavy protein foods. So if you see that was beautiful, perfect food layering and food combining, passed down thousands of years in my family, I'm sure, no doubt about it. And so that's the nice thing, is that I can pass down that same tradition, teach my family, teach my children as well. But now I want to get into more of the technical part of that. And again, if there's any questions that, always do feel free to reach out to me. I want to make this a little easier because maybe that little story didn't help you as much as actually giving you like kind of like the behind the scenes science. And that's this. Proteins, fish, meat, nuts, eggs, poultry, anything like that, it really only combines with one thing, and that's vegetables, okay? So if you're adding a lot of butter or things like that to whatever your protein may be, not a good mix, okay? If you're adding potatoes and pasta or rice or things like that to your meat-based dishes, those do not combine very well. So think about this. When you do a protein meal, and again, we usually reserve that for like dinner time is what I recommend with a lot of private wellness clients. And the reason, I'm not going to get into that today, but it's for like the very first time that you actually get to sit down and relax so that you can actually bring blood flow to your stomach. Well, that might be the best time to have your more challenging meal. Now, again, in Ayurvedic medicine, they would say that during lunch. Sure, that makes sense, but a lot of people eat at their desk, they eat on the run. And another saying in Ayurveda is death looks over the shoulder of the man who eats while standing. And essentially, that just means if you are not bringing blood flow to your stomach, that food's just going to ferment. It's going to cause bacteria. It's going to cause ama. We don't want that. So that's why we reserve it for a little later at night. And plus, if you're looking to lose weight, if you're looking to stay lean, best time you wouldn't want to load up on your carbs at night. And we've just seen that again. We're getting close to 250,000 client appointments now. We have a lot of data backing that up. Okay. But now when would it make sense to do more of these carbohydrates? Well, if you did a plant-based protein like beans or lentils, some type of legume, chickpeas, that's when you can mix that with some rice, some quinoa, some pasta if you wanted to, and your veggies, okay? So those all combine well. The only thing is those beans and those lentils and the chickpeas, they don't combine well since they're a plant-based protein with animal-based proteins, okay? But you can have that with a little bit of fat. So again, a meat-based protein or paleo protein, we'll call that paleo protein, it only combines well with mildly starchy vegetables and non-starchy vegetables. That's essentially meaning like everything but your sweet potatoes and those types of things, or your potatoes in general. So it combines well with all of your greens, all of your asparagus, all of your broccoli, all of those things totally fine with animal-based proteins. But your plant-based proteins, they combine great with everything except animal-based proteins or nuts and those types of things. So hopefully that makes sense with that. You can even use nuts in there, but they're not a perfect food combiner. Okay, so next up we have fruit. Now, fruit's actually simple, meaning that fruit doesn't combine well with anything but itself, okay? So essentially, fruit's great as a smoothie in the morning. That will work totally fine. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Everything's blended, simple to digest. That's why we also sip a smoothie for 60 to 90 minutes. We don't just chug it right away because it's in and out of your stomach really quick. So I like to just time release it, meaning like you drink it over the course of an hour or so. All right, but there are different types of fruits. There's acid, subacid, and sweet fruit. Now, acid fruits are blackberries and grapefruits and lemons and limes and orange and pineapple, a lot of the citrus-based ones, plums, pomegranate, raspberries, sour apple, and strawberry, okay? These subacid ones are apple, apricot, blueberry, cherry, kiwi, mango, peach, pear, and plum, and those are sweet. And then your sweet fruits are banana, dates, currants, figs, grapes, papaya, persimmons, prunes, and raisins. Now, if you didn't memorize those, that's okay. I'm going to link up these charts right on the show notes page. So again, I try to always make things as simple as possible, but I'm always open to suggestion as well. If there's always better ways to do things. Again, this is everyone's show. This is our community show. It's the way that we can go back anytime we want to an episode and say, oh, what was that about, food combining? What was that about? Like yesterday's show was strengthening your liver, or maybe like last Wednesday's show, episode 474 on how do you nourish your thyroid? How do you get your thyroid to work better? What foods are best for that? So again, we can go back to all of these shows, and today's show is 481. So you just go to stephencabral.com/podcasts, and then just scroll down and go to 481, and that will have all of these charts from today. So what I want to say about fruits is this, is that the subacid category, you can mix those fruits with a sweet fruit or an acid fruit, but acid fruit and sweet fruit don't mix, okay? So basically, what you want to do is look at those categories. And again, you can be, why does this matter? Well, for people with a lot of bloating, a lot of digestive issues, skin issues, headaches, sluggishness, fatigue, it matters more to them. For your everyday person who feels good, they don't have to be as careful, but still, if you want to go by true food combining, which is what we're talking about today, you won't want to mix things with, like, let's say, grapefruit and figs, lemon lime with persimmons, oranges with dates, those types of things. So look at it that way. And again, think about it, like the sweeter the fruit, think about how sweet bananas and figs are. You can just taste that. So raisins, same exact thing. You don't want to mix that with more of your tart based ones. Okay. I think that'll make it easier when you think of like very tart. Okay. Don't mix it with sweet. That doesn't make as much sense from food combining. And the last one, before I just give you my parting tips, is melons. Melons, again, all of this comes from Ayurveda, by the way. All of this comes from Ayurvedic medicine. Now we've updated it to 21st century science, and we can look at how the enzymes, how they work. We can look at how quickly foods digest, because that's what we're talking about, like animal-based proteins. That's why, again, with my grandmother's meal plan, food combining proteins like meats and those types of things combine great with veggies because they're going to digest at about the same period of time as well. So we can get into it from that science, but honestly, this goes back 6,000 years. They've known this for a long, long time. And so melons, though, in Ayurvedic medicine, melons never combined well with anything. So like the prosciutto and melon, they don't combine very well. So keep those melons by themselves. And again, fruit works great as a smoothie. You can do that in the morning. You can do it as a mid-afternoon snack. Works fantastic as well. The only little caveats to that is, like, you want to get really technical, acid-based fruits, like a sour apple, like a green apple, and a handful of almonds, they actually okay food combiners. The acid fruits, because they're more acidic, do combine okay with some nuts, if you want to do that as a mid-afternoon snack. And sometimes this makes it easier. Bananas literally go well with everything except for protein, except for literally protein, which is going to slow the digestion of that. So bananas are considered cooked foods in Ayurveda. They digest differently. And again, in India, where I studied for many, many months, as well as Sri Lanka, there's so many different types of bananas. There's starchier ones. There's what's called resistant starch ones. And there's all different types. But bananas are always considered cooked, meaning like if you kept them on the vine, they start to get those little brown spots. That's the perfect time. That's when they've been ripened, okay? And a couple other things. Avocado goes well with everything, again, except protein. Butter goes well with most things, of course not fruit, these things don't go well with fruit, except for protein. Now why? Well, proteins, those animal proteins, don't do great with additional fats added to them. But those fats can be added to your carbohydrate dishes, such as your rice or your, whole grains if you're doing that, or you certainly could put ghee or grass-fed butter or olive oil or avocado or any types of things like that with your sweet potatoes or yams or anything like that. That would work great. So hopefully I didn't confuse you more so in this topic than when you started. This is a very intense process, but all I want you to do is I want to sum it up right now. Animal proteins really only mix well at a meal like a salad or veggies, okay? But if you're doing a vegan-based protein such as chickpeas, lentils, legumes, anything like that, those could be fine with veggies as well as starches such as the potatoes, okay? And then fruit, best by itself. Let's say a smoothie, you're doing that, and you could certainly do a smoothie with your vegan-based powder, or you can do it as a mid-afternoon snack. And again, nuts, great mid-afternoon snack, or with some of the acid-based fruits. That's when they work perfect together. So when you look at it like that, it's pretty simple. Meaning like vegetables pretty much combine with everything, but the two different types of proteins, they only combine with themselves. They don't mix. So hopefully today's show was helpful. And again, to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to give you two charts. You just go to stephencabral.com/481 for today's show notes. Thank you once again for tuning into the Cabral Concept. I'll be back tomorrow with our Training Thursday show. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.